We have etiquette tips for you that'll make sure you always get invited back to game night.
I'm Mia, and I love drinking soda without ice.
I'm BZ, and I hate ice in my soda. And that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds. And you can go to Patreon to support us directly. And if you do that, you get to see some exclusive videos that no other human being on the entire planet gets to see.
We're also sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you use the code
Nerds
at checkout, you can save 5% of your hard-earned dollars on your entire order.
Yeah, you're going to buy cards anyway, so why not save tangible money on the cards and tell them we sent you with the code Nerds? It's that easy. And we're sponsored by Dragon Shield. They got the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
And if you don't want good sleeves, don't buy Dragon Shield. And if you don't want your sleeves protected, I would say don't go to the US and EU links to buy the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
So that's just my advice if you don't want good sleeves.
We're also sponsored by Moxfield.com, the best place online to build a deck. There's going to be an ad for Moxfield somewhere in this video, and you can't guess where it is. If you said you guessed and you got it right, you're lying.
And happy birthday to everyone whose birthday is today. So we've got some key, crucial, must-know etiquette tips for Commander. This is the guaranteed way. If you follow all these tips, I would guarantee you're going to be invited back to game night. If you go to a random friend group, a new LGS, you're going to be welcome back. If you just got to follow these tips. And the first one, let's just go to the basics. It's rule 0. Be honest about your deck. When the game starts and you're playing against unknown strangers, randoms, this is kind of what these rules apply to. Some basic etiquette. Just tell them what your deck does. We don't need to stomp anyone or get percentage points before the game starts. Let's get percentage points after the game starts.
I think it's goodwill to be, gaining goodwill to be honest about your deck. And also, it helps people not feel kind of betrayed later. Because if you say something along the lines of, oh, my deck doesn't have tutors in it, and then you pull a tutor turn 1 or 2, I might feel a little bit betrayed that you lied to me about your deck.
Why did you just lie? And if you forgot, that's one thing, but maybe just take a second to think and say, if my deck doesn't have any of the things, double check to make sure that's true. If you say your deck doesn't have fast mana and you play Soul Ring on turn 1, I'm going to be like, what the heck? I'm not going to leave or hate you. I'm just going to go, why did you say that? You didn't have to say that.
I think also representing your deck properly is a really good way of making sure you get invited back. If you say this deck is not a stacks deck and then you play a stacks deck, the table's not going to like you or believe anything you say in terms of deals or something too, because you set a bad precedent.
Yeah, if anything, you actually lower your win percentage. People will just be irritated at you and be like, okay, I guess nothing you said is can be taken as true, so we'll just get you out of this game.
Commander's such a social format anyway, so kind of the bonds between players are really important to keep strong. So don't lie before the game even starts.
Yeah, and I think even using a 1 to 10 power scale, my deck's a 7. Okay, but let's elaborate. You don't play fast mana. You don't play tutors. You don't have infinite combos. That's more of the stuff I want to hear. Next is don't be a sore loser. I think everyone, kind of has to fight this urge a little bit just to kind of when the game doesn't go your way, there's always a reason. There's always something you could have done differently. For the most part, though, your opponents don't really want to hear about it, and they really shouldn't have to.
Yeah. If you're setting up for a big turn and someone counterspells it, it doesn't ever feel good.
No.
But it's a good play on their part because everyone else is trying to win too. So just know that since everyone's trying to win, you're trying to win too. You can't feel bad about them having the same goal as you, right?
Yeah. Another thing is that fun is not zero sum. There is not 100 fun points to be allocated. And if you take 100 fun points, no one else can have any. You can all have fun whether you're winning or losing. Certain cards lend themselves to that more than others. I think of Monarchy. I think of Initiative. And then I think of cards that are not that fun for everybody, like Vorinclex or Winter Orb or something. And those cards are the ones we stray away from.
Yeah, just because your deck is doing the thing, that doesn't mean your opponents can't be having fun too. Mm-hmm. If your thing is just flipping off random spells off the top of your deck with Wand of Wonder or something, that might be fun for you and also fun but for your opponents because it's just really random. But if it's something oh, you can't untap your lands or I'm destroying all of your lands, that might be fun for you but not fun for your opponents.
Right, and then just because your opponent is going off doesn't mean you have to not be having fun. If they're doing some wacky stuff and they're just kind of enacting some normal run-of-the-mill game plan, that's cool. Good for them. They're not blowing up your lands. They're just kind of playing creatures or playing spells in a cool order. That's great. We can still have fun with that. That moves right into be excited for your opponents. We can support all big plays. If there's some huge blowout, if I set up for 6 turns and then I go boom, 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 here's my killer spell, and then someone counters, it's that was huge. Like, nice.
Yeah, I have a friend who loves to make these big plays, and every time he's like, oh, Genesis Wave for 36 twice?
Yeah.
It's like, that's awesome. And just because your deck is not doing the thing doesn't mean you can't be excited for other people's decks to also do their thing.
Yeah, shout out to James because he basically has all haymakers. Every deck has like 1,000 haymakers. He's going to throw them over and over and over and try to set up these big plays. But if you counter it, untap, and then make some giant swing for like 100 damage, you're like, whoa, all right, that was well played, like nice. Like I do not see that a lot of Commander players.
That's
tables.
that's the attitude that I strive to be like. It's hard to be like that sometimes too.
It's hard to be like, you got me, nice.
Yeah, but it's a good goal to strive for.
I think it really like lifts the mood of everybody at the table. It might even lend to you playing more games because they're like, yeah, I want to play again. That was great.
Yeah, it just, once you're excited for everyone's plays, including your own, I feel like everyone else is going to be more excited for yours too.
Yes. Another piece of big information, I guess, is be mindful of other players' time. I think time kind of is zero sum, right? Like, it's kind of understood concept that everyone's going to take about the same amount of time to play the game. That someone's going to get eliminated first, but you know what I mean. Generally, we're all signing up to play the game about the same amount. So if you put cards like extra turns and all these sort of like resource denial cards, you're not really respecting that concept that everybody goes into the game generally agreeing to.
Yeah, I think that especially with like chaining infinite extra turns or something like that, once you start doing that, I'm going to ask like, do you have a way to win? And if you say no, I might just be like, oh, okay, because it's at that point, it's like, I don't know who's going to win at this point. You're just taking infinite turns to do what? Like, if you do this stuff, make sure you have a game plan in action if you're playing these types of combos and strategies.
Yeah, if you have that stuff in your deck, just mention it in Rule 0. I think that's definitely something to mention, like, hey, my deck has a lot of extra turns in it. Like, is that okay with you guys? And they might say no, and then you can pull out a different deck. Another example of this that I think is a small, like way smaller scale. We're not being a jerk here. We're just saying something that I think you can avoid doing that I love shortcutting. Well, shortcutting in general, but I call it the end of turn special. So let's just say the game starts. I go first. I draw a card. I play Terramorphic Expanse. Then I pass to Mia, who plays a Plains and passes. And then I pass to someone else. They draw and they play an island. And then the person before me goes. They draw and they play a swamp. And then I go end of turn, crack, Terramorphic Expanse. I think it's just easier if I say Terramorphic, crack it, go, shortcut to the end of turn thing, and not make everybody wait. So I can get the exact same effect with just less time. I just saved everybody 30 seconds. And when you add it up, that's like 90 seconds of everyone's time.
Yeah, I think we're not pointing at the point where it's like if you're cracking a fetch to go get something where you might play a 1-drop or something, that's very different. But if the land comes in tapped and you have nothing to do in your hand, that's when we mean to just crack it and go because you don't have any other actions that you can take or are willing to take.
Yeah, there's things you can do like spinning top. I like to shortcut spinning top as well. Just tap a mana and say, I'm going to spin top. I can rearrange it before my turn starts. Just let me look at these cards. It'll save some time. I really love stuff like that. Even if it's a fetch and I have Esper Sentinel, I'll go fetch for Hallowed Fountain, shock, Esper Sentinel, go. Like, I love trying to see what kind of shortcuts I can get in. It makes for more magic, and it really cuts out, like, the lamest part of the game, I think, which is just waiting. So definitely try to see if you can get some shortcuts, but make sure you all agree on it.
Yeah, I think also this plays into tutors too. If you're tutoring for something, know generally what you're tutoring for, whether it's a board wipe or a certain creature or the spell that's going to win. Because if you're sitting there and you have like Demonic Tutor and you can pick anything in your deck and you don't know what you're looking for, that also is not kind to other people who might have like a limited amount of time.
Yeah, and I think another way to save your opponent's time and just generally have everyone's opinion of you not go down is just to come prepared. So this is kind of on the lines of like, don't make people wait for you. So like if you have a deck that's like, I don't know, Slimefoot Squee, and you have a bunch of sapling tokens that you're going to need, but maybe you have some other like Eldrazi spawn tokens or a goat token from Roast Rider. If you don't have anything representing your tokens and you don't come prepared and you just use face down magic cards, this is going to waste time when people have to figure out what's going on. Or if you don't dig out your tokens before the game starts, if you have all the physical tokens with you and you go like, all right, hold on guys, and you fish through your bag and you're fishing and you're fishing and you're like, everyone's like, what are you doing? You're fishing and you're like, boom, a goat token. Everyone's like, okay. I think it's okay to just take 10 seconds before the game, get everything out. Maybe while you're waiting for somebody to fetch or something, get it all prepared. Don't have people just wait for you to do things that aren't even game actions.
That's one of the reasons we really like Infinite Tokens. Not sponsored.
Yeah, not sponsored.
But they're really, really good because you can just use them for any type of tokens, so you don't have to carry around a big stack. Another thing to come prepared for is like bringing your phone and a battery if you're using your phone for light.
Yeah.
Or if you're like rolling for first, if you have the dice, that's really, really important to just bring out and make sure that you have sleeves too. If you don't make people like watch you sleeve your deck and then play.
Please no. The next thing is going to be basically the opposite of what we just talked about. This is to avoid the phrase, this is like a general recommendation, avoid the phrase, I don't care. As much as you can be excited for other people's plays, your reactions to other people's plays can just totally bring the entire morale of the table down and kind of like ruin the fun of a game.
Yeah, I think BZ and I have said this before, but there's no value to saying like, I don't care. I'm going to counter your spell. I don't care. Like, that doesn't bring any positivity to the table.
Like, oh, what? Oh, okay. I have to say that I'm going to counter your spell, right? I need to communicate what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But you do not need to say, this is actually good for me. I don't care. Like, fine, I'll get a trigger off this. It's like, whoa. Like, take the aggression and just, like, put it away. React that way in your head, and then say something actually nice.
Yeah, I think that's also setting a precedent for how the rest of the game will go, because if I'm countering something really early in the game, that's like kind of consequential, but won't really matter towards you late, and you go, I don't care, that makes you go like, ooh, maybe I don't want to interact with this player later or something, or maybe I want to get this game over with as soon as possible or get this player out so I don't have to deal with that aggression.
Yeah, is that going to leave a positive taste in my mouth? There's no way anyone goes, oh, you don't care? Cool. Like that. I think I want to play another game with you because you don't care about my plays.
Yeah, interaction is a big part of Magic anyways, so you just have to realize that they're just playing the game just like you.
Yeah, exactly. Some strategies are going to draw more hate than others. This is a true statement about the format. We can say stacks, we can say mass land destruction, we can say infinite turn combo decks or whatever. But that's just kind of a fact. You just need to be prepared for it. This kind of comes in Rule 0. Some decks are going to require, hey, I've got this deck. Is that okay? Some people are going to say yes. Some people are going to say no. We can prepare for that, but you need to be prepared or else you'll walk away from this going, nobody wanted to play with me. It's like, well, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think that, for instance, I have a poison deck, and some of the cards say put 3 poison on immediately, put 4 poison on immediately, and BZ tries to kill me as soon as possible, and I have to be ready for that because it's so, like, quick sometimes that you just have to realize that, like, poison, mass land destruction, stacks, anything that really prevents people from playing or wins very, very quickly and explosively will draw more hate than others.
Yeah, some decks, I think Poison's a good example because I don't think Poison is even in the unfun category of like mass land destruction and stuff, where I don't think it's like taboo to build a deck like that, but you do need to play against it differently, and I want to know you're playing Poison, and I think you have to be prepared for me to not want to get poisoned, and one of the only ways to do that is to just kill the player, because if you're at 8 poison, there's no way to stop getting to 10.
Yeah, especially those irreversible things. Like with if you Armageddon me, I'm not going to just suddenly get 10 lands back. So.
Yeah, this is not going to happen. So then I think what would happen then, and then following the next tip, is to go to moxfield.com. It's the best deck building website. You can go to Moxfield, build the perfect Rule 0 deck, put all the Monarch cards, make your opponents draw, make it still good for you. You can sort and see what the price you want to build is. I want to build a $140 deck. Guess what? Moxfield shows you in every step of the way what the cheapest version of the card is. You can update to the cheapest and what the price of the card is.
Speaking of Moxfield and Rule 0, this is a great Rule 0 tip, considering if someone says, hey, do you have this card, and this card in your deck, like Soul Ring or Mana Crypt or Demonic Tutor, you can go to your list immediately and say, yep, and like just go to your sorcery, oh yeah, I do have it, or no, I don't, and just show them. And it's just a really easy way for people to get the vibe of your deck immediately without even just like making them look through it.
That's such a good point. You could also just hand them your phone. If you put it on visual grid, you can see all the cards in a row and say, here's my deck. Like, I'm not sure if this deck is worth, like, I don't know if I can play this deck against your Henzi and your whatever else. Like, here you go. And they're like, seems fine to me. And then you can just get right started. Moxfield saves a lot of time.
Yeah, and saves friendships.
Almost a secret etiquette tip, even.
Absolutely.
Let's just mark it down. That was a real tip. That wasn't even an ad.
Yes. Next is, if you're arch enemy, you can't really complain. I play like Kalia. I play Atraxa. These are big, explosive decks. And when people want to kill my commander, I have to be ready for that in advance, because if they let me untap with my commander, or if they let me do the things my commanders want to do, it's going to be way worse for them in the long run.
Yeah, this is going to tie in with our next tip, but arch enemy implies that you are so far ahead that the other 3 players need to team up against you. So if you are at that point, and or even if just the other 3 players agree that you're at that point, I don't really know how you can complain in the game. You can maybe say, all right, well, I didn't really like their threat assessment. Maybe I won't come back to play with them. But if they're like, we can't stop you, we have to work together, I think you got to be prepared. You got to look at your board and go, okay, I got Avengers Zendikar and 13 plant tokens, and I'm going to attack for 1,000. Like, all right, I understand. you gotta like their reaction is going to be proportional to the threats you present. So you can't be mad when your stuff dies if you're winning by a million miles.
I also think it plays into somewhat Rule Zero because we've talked that if you have an infinite combo in your deck, it's way scarier than a deck without an infinite combo, even if the strategies are the same. So immediately you become more of a threat.
I completely agree with that, and I really can't stress that enough. If you take the exact same deck list and then you switch one card that creates an infinite combo that's possible with one deck, and where the other one now can still never do it, I will always default, when all else is even, to attacking the player who can infinite combo me. I think that's totally reasonable. I think there's a huge power jump, even just from including infinites that are possible, even 3-card, 4-card infinites. If that's possible, I think there's a huge power jump. I'm coming after you. I think that's fair.
And if that's the tipping point of becoming archenemy or not, you just have to mentally be prepared.
I think, and then we can go right into the second one, which is almost like, tangentially related. It's okay to disagree about threat assessment. If Mia casts Doomblade on my Thraben Inspector, and I think it's the worst play ever, I can say, I think it's reasonable to say, oh, why'd you do that? Why did you Doomblade my Thraben Inspector? There's a Calamax over there. I'm really doing good. I'm picking random cards today. And Mia goes, I need the Thraben Inspector gone. Okay, it's over, right? We've now disagreed about whether it was right to Doomblade this. I don't have all information. I can't make an objective judgment. I have to just, at some point, shut up and just let her play be different than what I would do.
Every deck has a different game plan, so every deck needs certain things there or gone. Like, for instance, I've seen my friend's Yuriko deck, and he's bounced, like, the most dirtily little creatures so he can swing in. Like, there are bigger creatures that could hit him for a lot more damage, but he needs that hit in with Yuriko to flip the top.
Right, so he might actually kill a Thraben Inspector, and it's like, well, I don't understand why you did that. But next turn you go, oh, he needed a blocker out of the way. But complaining about it right now, they're not going to tell you they need a blocker out of the way. They're just going to go, can you just let me play the game? Most of the time, I think it falls into that. But let's even just say that, this person who's Doomblading a Thraben Inspector, it's an awful play. They shouldn't have done it. You can't control what they do. You just have to accept that they made a bad play. You don't have to come back and play with them if you don't want to. But complaining right now in the game is just completely needless.
Yeah, some people might agree on threat assessment. That's why people talk at the table and that sort of thing. And some people might not. But Magic is such a game of, like, secrecy, and that's why you can't see your hand and stuff. So it's more of a just trust that they're doing the best that's for them and play around what's doing the best for you.
I think to not encroach on, like, table talk too much, because you're allowed to respond, you're allowed to say things. I think a good rule of thumb is to be allowed to push back on a spell you disagree with once, and then just let what happens happen. We can't have a debate about every spell on the stack.
Yeah, there's only so much talking that you can do. They're not going to reverse it after a certain point, so there's no need to prod at it once it's resolved.
Yeah, every once in a while I'll be like, hey, you could miss a confluence. You could actually bounce this creature. And they go, oh, yeah, you're right. Like that, I think I will do that. But if they said no, I'm just going to leave it alone.
Yeah, I think at a certain point you just have to go, okay, well, this is going to influence my next play maybe, and then just roll with it.
Yeah, exactly. What's the next one, Mia?
The next one is no needless bullying. If there's somebody at the table who, like, for instance, has no resources, they're just not really doing anything, there's no real reason to just kick them out of the game immediately just because you can.
Yeah, and maybe there even is, like, let's say, all right, you can just eliminate them for free. That's good for you in the game, but as we're talking about being invited back to Commander Night or being invited back to this LGS or being welcomed by a new random play group, I don't think it's not gonna look too good. There's like a social thing there. Like we don't necessarily need to bully someone, even if it is the right play. Sometimes it is, and then I think sometimes it both is the right play and is the only play you can make to continue having fun. But this is where we're just talking about, like, maybe not just KO them for randomly.
I mean, the game has to end eventually, and people do need to get out of the game and die. But if there's a point where everyone is at 80 life, there's someone at 5 and they haven't done anything all game, is it really kind to kick them out for 5 and then make them watch you play for the rest of the game while it just, like, is whittling down?
Yeah, I just think when you can eliminate a player, maybe just do a quick mindful check of, like, is this going to really sour this player's experience? And if the answer is yes, you go, well, I probably shouldn't do it, or would not eliminating them sour everyone else's experience because they're playing whatever, they're going to just win. It's like, well, okay, well, then you should eliminate them. Yeah.
It's more of a matter of, like, can they win anytime soon? And if they can, then maybe it is the right play.
Yeah, just keep an eye out. This next one gets under my skin a little bit. I haven't seen it in a while, but I still know that it happens, and I still really don't like it. It's conceding as a spell. I would like to say that conceding not really a spell you can cast, not really a tool in my arsenal to impact the outcome of a game. But because Magic has to be worded this way, conceding can happen at any point. It does not use the stack, and you just basically can piece out of a game along with all of your game pieces because you have to be able to take your ball and go home. Players sometimes, rarely, use this as a complete disrespectful, salty, spiteful play. The easiest example I always go to is Mia's attacking me with 60 power of lifelink. I'm at 5. I'm going to die for sure. But I just go before damage, concede, and then Mia gains 0 life. Now, that's what the rules say. But if you do that, here's what the table's going to say. Oh, okay. All right, Mia, I'll gain you 60 life and we'll just keep playing. Like, they're going to absolutely 100% undo whatever spiteful stuff you just did, pretend like it happened, and then probably not want to play with you.
Yeah, I like to say concede at sorcery speed, because if it's on your turn, you can't win. It's just like, all right, that doesn't really affect anyone else's plays because, they can only affect you at instant speed. It's not really going to be like not gaining 60 life on their swing or something.
Sometimes I go, all right, guys, like, I got nothing here. I have 4 lands in my hand. I really don't want to king make. I'm just going to concede on my turn. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I think that's completely reasonable. There's no need to king make, especially when you're conceding. Like, there's no action. There's no way conceding can increase your win percentage, right? So I don't think you ever need to do it at a spiteful time.
Yeah. We're like directly saying spiteful conceding. We're not saying if it's like, oh, you're attacking for 1 million and, you have the game. Oh, I'll just give it to you. Good game. That's way different than we're saying.
Yeah, we're saying, no, I'm only conceding now because I don't want you to gain the life, because I don't want you to get the combat damage trigger. It's like, that's just not how anyone wants to play Magic.
Yeah, that's just like feels bad.
Keep it to yourself, or if with a play group that really is cool with that. If they're like, if this is a close friend group and they're like, oh, it's like, that's cool, but not to strangers.
Yeah, the next one is pay attention. Magic is such a game of triggers and actions that it's really frustrating when you're trying to take your turn to the most optimal way and someone's like having a conversation in the corner or texting or something like that. I especially hate when people who's using their life as like with their phone starts texting in the middle of it and we have like combat or something. So it's like, oh, this person has to take 20 and they're still on their phone. It's more of just now we have to keep mentally what all that combat damage is, especially if it's more than just one combat phase or something. That's just a lot to keep track of along with triggers and plays, and that just really ruins or sours the game experience.
I think this is a really easy thing to keep track of if you're doing it. If you're forgetting what the board state looks like because you're off doing something else, because you're like eating in the middle of the game, I just don't think that reflects good on you to the other 3 players, especially if they're strangers. If you're texting during the game, I assume you're not interested. I'm sorry, that's what I assume. You could say it's an emergency or whatever, but that's completely different. Obviously, we're just talking about texting your buddy or eating Cheetos or something. Like, I just don't. I need to see you're invested. If you don't know that somebody played something that's been out for 3 turns, I'm gonna go, do you really want to be here? Like, we're all invested in the board state. We're all equally kind of paying attention to what's going on. I would expect that from everybody.
Yeah, there's certain times where being on your phone is like all right, I'd say. For instance, I've seen people tutor and just look at their phone real quick, like the turn before.
Moxville.com.
Yeah, just to figure out what they're tutoring for or what they still have left in their deck.
Absolutely fair.
Or I've seen people write down like information. It's like revealed a card. It's like I've seen people jot that down really quickly, and that's whatever. Like some people don't have the best memory.
If anything, that's you paying more attention.
Yeah, so I respect a lot of that. But if you're just going off and you're like, oh, be right back, and then you go to do something for 15, 20 minutes, not an emergency just because you weren't feeling like playing the game, that's really disrespectful of everyone's time and energy and like motivation to play the game.
Yeah, I don't really want to come back to you if you're not paying attention, asking what everything does because you just refused to pay attention when it was read. This is okay. Shout out to Mia's friend Jay for this next one. This is like has nothing to do with behavior, but I think it's the best rule maybe you'll ever implement into Commander. This is no drinks on the table. I think if you just never have drinks on the table, there's no catastrophic event that can happen. Everyone's had drinks spilled on their stuff. And this to me is so simple, but it's so genius.
My friend Jay actually has a no open container policy, which is his official rule. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just no open drinks on the table. You either have to put them somewhere else or below the table
on
or
the
something
end
like
table.
That. Because our cards are worth so much money. It feels really bad if your glass of water ruins someone's $600 deck just because you were just a little bit like mindless at the moment.
I mean, just talk about not getting invited back. You go to somebody's house and you spill stuff all over the place. that's brutal, and you can't even hate on them too much. Like, well, I did ruin all their cards.
Yeah, I have this differently at my house where I have a coffee table underneath the playing table where we put all of our drinks there. It's a really good way of just keeping the food and drinks separate so there's no danger to the cards, but we can still have our refreshments as we please.
Right. It's genius. You bring up your drink and you go, and then you put it back down, and nothing's at risk of happening. It's so good. I think it's going to save you money over the time.
Yeah.
If you don't listen to this and you play risky, you get your crispy Coke and you put it on the table, someone's going to knock it over. It's not necessarily their fault, but at the end, it does kind of come down to the person who put the drink on the table, which was you.
Yeah, especially if you do have pets. Like I know Amber just knocked over a glass of water recently, and
They will.
cat has definitely done that aside from cards. So it's just it's good to think ahead and make sure you're considerate of everyone's property.
Which is the best segue into the next tip, which is respect other players' cards. Obviously, don't spill Coca-Cola on them, but this extends to, hey, you played Ghostly Prison or you played Grave Titan? I've never read that card before. What does it do? It's probably bad. I would like to read it. Hey, can I read your Grave Titan versus, what does this do? It's like not going to help anybody.
Yeah, asking to see people's cards is always good, especially if you forget what it does. Hey, can I just grab that real quick? Or, oh, that's a really cool art. Can I see that? This also applies to sometimes people will flick their cards when they put them down on the table. So if you are taking someone's card, don't flick it down. Just hand it back to them gently.
I flick my cards so bad. I used to play Modern, and all my Tarmogoyfs, Dark Confidants, and Lilies were bent at the corner because I would go and play them so hard every time, hundreds of times. But when I take other people's cards, I hold it. I cradle it like a child. I pick it up and I go, here, thank you. Here you go. And I just have to make sure to be super careful because it's not my card to ruin.
You can treat your cards however you want. We
Horribly.
can't stop you. You can bridge your cards, but you can't bridge other people's cards without their consent.
Yeah, and that bridges us to the video that I think will be super helpful. It is a budget bombs video. There's really cheap cards. How does this relate to etiquette? You got to watch the video to find out. And remember, our secret tip for the day, it's Mia's got it.
Make sure you don't spill Coca-Cola on your friends' cards.